What's up guys, welcome back to another Revit video. This video is a complete guide to worksets. Worksets can be found in the Collaborate tab under Worksets here. So a couple things to note about worksets. You have to be within a network or collaborative model, as in it's not just one local file. It is a file that multiple people have access to or can work in at the same time, or a central model. One way you know that you're in a central model is if you see the option up here that says synchronize and modify settings. If this is not grayed out and you have the option to sync the model, that means you are in a work shared enabled and central model. Also, if you're in a local file and not in a central model, the worksets option will not even be active. You won't have the option to use worksets. So worksets is something that is a core part of a collaborative model, which is what I'm working in right now. So first thing with worksets, if I click worksets, is I've got by default shared levels and grids in workset 1. These are presented in what you might think of as layers. I like to think of worksets in general as layers. If you're coming from CAD or even Photoshop, any program that has layers, these work the same in a way. So if you could keep in your head that these are functioning sort of as layers and can function as layers, that will help grasp them better in my mind. So by default, again, you have the shared levels and grids and workset 1. These are each their own workset. If you look at the top here, the active workset is shared levels and grids, and you can change that. We'll go over that later. You also have the option to gray inactive workset graphics. So I'm going to save this lower portion down here at the bottom to the very end, and we can apply everything that I say throughout this video to these at the bottom. So if we look at shared levels and grids, we first have the option, or rather display, of editable. And there's an option of editable and non-editable. So if you click this grid, or if you click this workset, you look to the right, you always have the option to make a new one. We will do that soon. You have the option to delete, rename, open or close it, and the option to make it editable or non-editable. So to me, editable and non-editable is very confusing. I don't like to think about it, and generally I don't think about it. And so I'm also going to tell you not to think about it, but at the same time I'm going to explain what it is. So if shared levels and grids, if you have a workset that is not editable, that means no one owns it and anyone can edit it. So if you look, I have touched something that falls within that workset. Every element falls into a workset. I have touched something that falls into the workset, so I'm technically a borrower of that workset. Now, if I were to change this to editable, that would mean that I become the sole owner of that workset, which means that I am the only one who can edit, touch, or do anything with any element that might be in this workset. It's very important to know that when you do this, everyone else who is a part of the model, everyone who's working within the same model, collaborating with you, cannot edit any of the elements that fall within this workset if you have changed this to editable. Now they can edit it, but what will happen is that because you have sole ownership, you are going to receive, or they will receive a pop-up that says, hey, someone else is working on this and you don't own it, they do. Do you want to have them allow you and grant you access to that element? So you're going to constantly be bombarded with people sending you requests to edit a certain element, be it in one workset or another, whichever you have editable. So all that to say, like I said before, I don't generally take sole ownership of a workset for that reason, because you'll just be bombarded. There's not a lot of times where you'll want to do that, although one time you might want to do that is if you know you have to work on something very specific and you do not want anyone to touch anything, modify anything, and you know other people have to work on it. If I come across something like that, I might just wait until after hours and do it myself, and so I know that I'm the only one in the model. so I know I'm not going to be interrupted in any way or stepping over, tripping over anyone else while taking sole ownership of a specific work set. So all that to say, I'm going to turn that back to non-editable because I don't want to mess with that at all. If we go to the right here, we see that we have opened, and shared levels and grids is open, yes, and workset 1 is not open, no, or closed. So what open and close is, open, it's basically on or off. Yes means it's on, it's open. No, closed, it's off. This is also something I use very sparingly because what will happen is if I say yes, they'll just, all the elements that are in this work set will show up everywhere, function as normal, I don't have to worry about anything, which is why I generally keep them open. And yes, open. Whereas workset 1 right now, if I have any elements in here, which I don't think I do in this model, that's okay. Every element in here that is considered to be a part of workset 1 or any workset that is closed will not be seen anywhere. It's basically like turning it's turning the layer off, in other words. But it's like the hardest way of turning the layer off. You can't see it, edit it, or anything in any view. It's just gone. It's not there. Of course, it's still in the project. It's just not going to be seen in any view. You don't have to worry about it. It's completely closed. It's not open, not visible. And so I say that, and the final column here says visible in all views. And I have the option to check that or uncheck that. And so if I had to describe this, visible in all views, I would say it's something like a soft open and a soft close. So if I have shared levels and grids opened, that means every element is seen everywhere, they're functioning normally, they're there. I know they're there and they're visible. But if I check visible in all views and turn that off, then obviously all of these elements are not going to be visible in all views. Like, they're just gone in every view. But because the work set is still open, that means that every element is still technically there, and I can go into a specific view and bring them back. So to show that, I'll take shared levels and grids. I will leave it open, of course, but turn it off in all views. I'll hit OK, and we'll probably see most, if not all, these elements go away. There we go. I do not want to save right now. I'll go to the level 1. I don't see anything in here. I just like before. If I zoom extents, I see nothing. So I can go into visibility graphics and work sets, and I can see that work set 1 is closed, like we saw before, but shared levels and grids is not visible. Now, I am in a view template, so if I scroll down here to the view properties, view template happens to be plain construction. If I go to the work sets in this, I can see the same thing, shared levels and grids, it's not visible, and work set 1 is closed. Great. But even though work set 1 is closed, invisible, I still don't see it, and that's exactly how the closed option works. Now, we have the shared levels and grids that's not visible. I'm going to turn that to show, because in every view, regardless of whether the work set is visible in all views or not, I have the option to show, hide that, or use the global settings. And the global setting is what is being pulled from the work sets, be it visible in all views or not visible in all views. So if I hit show here, and I hit OK, I'm in the view template, I hit OK, everything shows back up. If I zoom extents, there we go, everything's back. But if I go back to the 3D view, there's nothing here. There's absolutely nothing here, and that's because if I go to the visibility graphics and work sets of the 3D view, I could see that, in fact, shared level and grids is not visible. I'll hit OK. I'm going to go back to work sets and turn that back on. So at this point, I've gone through just about everything. But now if we look down here, we can choose show user created. And imagine these are the user created work sets or layers that you've created. And of course, that's what we see. Now, if I uncheck that, I see nothing. That makes sense. If I go to project standards, I see all the project standards that are falling within a specific category of the Revit model. Same with families. These are all the families I have loaded into the Revit model. and I have views, all the views located in the Revit model. And so just like if we go back to user created, just like I have all these options for these different columns for the work sets, I have the same for families, for instance. I can make a specific family, maybe this specific wall mullion, curtain wall mullion, I can make that, I can take sole ownership of that specific mullion if I wanted to for some reason. I could also simply close that, or which means this specific mullion would not show up anywhere in the project, or I could turn that specific mullion to not be visible in all views. Now, I could do that with families, views, project standards, whatever it might be. But I will be honest, in my years of using Revit, I have never once had to deal with changing anything or even really wanted to with these project standards, views, and families as far as on a work set level. Because I can, 99% of the time, I can do whatever I need to do within these specific layers that I create myself and put, because I'm going to put all the elements that I need to in specific work sets. Because all these other options are down here are simply everything in my project that I could put in a work set, which it's everything in my model, but I want to be able to break it up myself. I don't want to have to go into families, very specific families, and turn those on or off or do whatever it is. I want to just put them in a work set that functions the same regardless of what element is in there. Okay, so I'm going to open work set 1. I will hit OK, and because I made shared levels and grids visible in all views, I should be able to see it in 3D right there. So it's all back, and you could also see your work sets down here at the very bottom of the screen. You can see all your work sets here. And so what I'd like to do now is show what an active work set is. So I have all these I could have as many work sets as I want, and I can set anyone to the active work set. So this option here under active work set is absolutely the same as down here. So I can do this on the fly without going to set up work sets. And this icon here at the bottom is the same icon as work sets there. So I don't have to worry about that. Something to note, and this is very important, very, very important. Always remember this. This is a problem that you start to see when you use multiple work sets and start working with different kinds of work sets that do different things and have different options set. The reason that there is such thing as an active work set, which you can change here or here, is if you were to draw a wall, if I were to draw a wall just right there, and I click on the wall, I can see that the work set is shared levels and grids. Now if I change the active work set down here to work set 1, I go down to wall and I create another wall. If I select this wall, now this wall is on work set 1. The second wall I created is on work set 1. So the whole idea being that the active work set is the work set that every element will go into that you create or copy or do anything to as far as creation. If I just move this, if I move that, it's not going to change the work set. But if I create a new wall, if I copy this wall, I believe this wall will now be a part of work set 1. Yes, work set 1. So that's something to know. So it's very important. And you'll see how that becomes more important as this video goes along. So at this point, we only have 2 work sets, and only one of those work sets has anything in there. I have shared levels and grids, which has everything in the whole model, and then I have work set 1, which has nothing. So I'll hit OK, and I want to start mixing some of these things up because I'll have different types of views when it comes to floor plans, site plans, whatever it might be, and I don't necessarily need or want to see all these things in all the views. So I'm going to go to work sets, and we're going to create a good number of work sets here. So I'll hit new, and I want to call this architecture. And from here on out, this is just how I have been most successful in using work sets in a professional setting. This is you're welcome to change it up from here. It can be as in-depth as this. It could be more in-depth. You can simply use 1 or 2 work sets. It kind of works. It's really how you want to use it. I tend to break it up into a few work sets so they're easy to manage. There's not too many, but I can also use them in different settings throughout the project. So I'm going to create an architecture. I'm going to create a site work set, and I'm going to create a links work set. So right now they're all editable. I own them all, and that's just because I created them. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that right now. After you sync or relinquish all of the elements, and syncing will do that as well, then you don't have to worry about this. This is just going to happen whenever you create a new work set. So, active work set. What I typically do 99% of the time, and it's just the way I work, I want everything that I make to go on the architecture tab, because in the architecture work set, because I don't want to have to worry about where things are. I just want to know that they're in architecture. And if for some reason I need to put them somewhere else, great. So I'll hit OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these floor plans. I'll deselect the trees and the stuff here in the middle. And so now I've got all these floor plans, everything within the floor plans, doors, whatever it might be, in the model selected. So now what I'll do is I'll scroll down here in the properties, and I will change the work set to architecture. So now all of these elements fall within the architecture work set. And this is something else I did not mention. The reason that Revit comes with a work set called shared levels and grids is because by default all the shared levels and grids, as in the levels, like even if I reveal hidden here and I click on these levels, this is level 1, the work set is shared levels and grids. So if I were to make some grids in a floor plan, they should go on to shared levels and grids. And you can rename that whatever you might want to do. You could even delete it and make a new one. It doesn't matter. But Revit does that for you in a way, so you're not kind of lost out in the cold with only one work set. So now I have all these elements on architecture. I'm also going to select these trees, these dumpsters, and the topography, and I'm going to put this on the site work set. And just like before, because I have all of these work sets open and visible in all views, I'll see them regardless of what work set they're on. And I'll take this Revit link, it's just a basic floor plan with some walls as an example. I'll take that link and I will put that in the links. So great, I have started to break this up. And if I go to level 1, I can see everything. And now if I go to the visibility graphics and work sets, I can see all of the work sets in here and if they're visible. This is great. I'll hit OK. I'm going to go to work sets now, and I'll hit work set 1. And at this point, I want to get rid of this work set. I don't need it. Again, there's nothing in there, but in case there were, I still don't want it. I don't want to deal with it. So you would notice that I can't delete it or even rename it for that matter. And that's because it is not currently editable. So what I have to do now is make that work set editable and take sole ownership of this entire work set to rename it. That's fine, but now I get a dialog that pops up and says you can't rename it. So all I have to do at this point is hit close. Do I want to make it active? I don't want to make work set 1 the active work set. 1, because I'm about to delete it, but 2, I want everything to still be a part of the architecture and go into the architecture work set by default. So I'll hit no. I'll go immediately back into work sets because that's what it told me to do. I'll hit work set 1 there. And it turns out, in fact, that everything in Revit's got its defaults, and work set 1 happens to be a Revit default. Now, what we want to do in this case is delete it, but Revit, it's just weird. You can't actually delete Workset 1 in Revit. This is a big discussion that's been going on for a while, but Workset 1 cannot be deleted. But the nice thing is you could actually rename it like we can. We have the option to do that right now. But again, I don't need this workset. But instead what I'm going to do is probably something I should have done in the beginning, but I'm going to take I'm just going to remove the architecture workset. And you might say, yeah, everything in the model that's on the architecture workset is going to be deleted. And I would say, yes, that's true, except for one minor option. So let's make this editable because I do want to delete it. And now that it's the architecture tab is editable and I have sole ownership, I can delete it. I'm going to get the same pop-up that says, hey, you got to reopen the worksets dialog. Okay. I'll reopen the worksets dialog. I'll hit architecture. I'll hit delete now. And this is one of the best options that Worksets has when it comes to organizing, because now I have the option to either delete everything in the workset because I don't care about anything there and I don't want to think about it and I don't want it to be in my project at all. Or what I can do is, instead of deleting everything, I can delete the workset, architecture, and move everything in the project to a different workset. In this case, I want everything architecture related to go to workset 1. So I'll hit OK. And what I'm going to get now is a removal of the architecture workset and everything that I want in workset 1. So now all I will do is, if you guessed it, I'm going to rename this to architecture. If I can spell that right. There we go. I'll hit OK, and now, just like before, I have architecture. Everything that I want there, perfect. I'll hit OK. And so now I'm going to go back to 3D. If I click on anything in the architecture here, or anything in this plans, I can see there in the architecture workset. If I click on the link, I can see it's in links, and same with the trees, it's on the site. This is awesome because now if I go to this level 1 construction view, the basic floor plan, I've got a view template on, and if I go to worksets, I can see the site is visible and everything's visible. Well, maybe what I want to do is not see the site in this plan. Well, I really don't want to. So I'll hit hide and I'll hit OK. And I don't see anything there, which is great. I only see the architecture that I want to see, the floor plans. Now if I go to the site plan, I see everything here. I see absolutely everything because everything is still on. If I go to this work set in the view template, I can go to worksets and everything is visible. Everything's on. I don't have to worry about it. That's probably what you want for a site plan. If I go to worksets, the way I generally work when it comes to linked models, maybe you have one that's a site, maybe you have something else that's a unit, maybe you've got 10 different linked models. Maybe it's crazy, I don't know. But typically what I do is I'll take the links, I'll leave it open so they're technically visible and in the project, but I will uncheck visible in all views. So I don't have to worry about having to go into a specific view and either turn that work set off or turn that link off. So that's awesome. So maybe for some reason in this site plan, the topography was on the links. Or maybe, and I guess for an example, I'll do that. Let's take this topography and I'm going to move it from the site to the links. Work set. Now I can't see it. And maybe I do want to see it because it might be Civil's Revit model. So now what I can do is, just like I did before, I can go to work sets in the view template, and even if the work set is set to not visible, as in the default here you could see, I could show it just in this view, and I can see everything that I need to, which is great. So I'm going to take this and put it back onto the site because that's what it is. And just, if I go now to the floor plan and the view template here, you can see that in the work sets, I've got the site that's hidden, and that's just the way this view template is set up. It works out perfectly. The site's hidden, of course. And links is not visible because that's the default, and architecture is visible. That's perfect. That's what I want to see. Now I'll go to 3D And I see everything because if I go to the visibility graphics of the 3D and Worksets, everything is visible. Of course, except for the links. That's perfect. So right now I'm going to turn the links on. I'll hit apply, and we can see that link come back here in the middle in just a second right there. So just like there's a million ways to do something in Revit, of course there's a million ways you can deal with Worksets and visibility of all of these different elements. Because I have a links workset, and I know that there's only one link, in this case, I could deal with showing the links through worksets, as in show or hide or use the global setting, or I can go to links, and there's my Revit model, and I can just turn that off. And if I hit apply, it'll go away in this view. Of course, there's a million ways that you could do this, but the reason I tend to leave the Revit links or whatever it might be on is that I can better globally manage them through worksets this way in the view templates. Because if I have 50 different 3D views that I need to look similar or the same graphically, then I would use worksets to turn off all my Revit links if I didn't want them there, and I don't have to go into every single view and turn the Revit links off individually. It would just be a pain, a complete pain. And finally, just the most minor thing that has to do with worksets, and it is up here. It's gray Inactive Worksets, and you can also find this in Worksets and just check right there. So if you select gray Inactive Worksets, you can see that everything that was not the architecture or active workset was grayed, and it's just an override. It's something I hardly ever, if have ever, used, because I always know that I'm a part of and have the active workset set as architecture, which means that every element that I make, copy, is going to show up in that workset, and from there I can take it to the correct workset as a way of managing layers. And it's the reason I do that again is because let's say I have all of my views set up and I bring a different element in. I know it's on the architecture set, and as soon as I put it on the right workset, it's going to have the correct visibility for every view template, for every view in the entire project. I don't have to worry about that element showing up in the right or wrong place. It's set up in the right place to be seen because I put it in the right workset, and I know I have them on in the correct place. That's how you have it set up. So all I have to say, I don't really use the gray Inactive Worksets because I always know I'm on architecture. Now, if you want to cycle between these, you can start to see how this might be useful. If you're every time you're making a different element, you're going and changing the active workset to whatever workset that element will go into ultimately, you can do it that way. But honestly, I would just save yourself the trouble and future headaches of leaving the active workset on one single workset that 90% of your elements go into, and from there you'd put them into another workset. And if for some reason you see on the site plan that they're not showing up, it might be that they're in the architecture workset by default because that's your active workset instead of on the site. It could be just something that simple. So just knowing where they might be, or really would be by default, as in your active workset that is constant and architecture or whatever you name it, is very, very good to do. And I think that's one of the best practices that you can and should keep when it comes to worksets. Now, honestly, that's it when it comes to worksets. Again, I don't use really any of these different options down here. I deal with them on, I guess you'd call it, the top level of worksets, because I want to organize everything myself. I sure hope you learned something when it comes to worksets. This was a complete and I hope comprehensive guide on worksets in Revit. If I missed something, if I'm outright wrong, please let me know in the comments. I want to know. Always demolish that like button. I know it really helps me a lot, and do that if you learn something especially. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. There will be a lot more coming out soon. Always coming out with more videos. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.